We've got another digital specimen walkthrough today, and this one is a specimen that we will be reviewing in the specimen walkthroughs on Thursday. So be on the lookout for that video. The link to that video should already be up in the channel as a premiere, so make sure you take a look at that on Thursday when that goes live, and that's how we're going to do it moving forward. On Tuesday, we'll do a digital walkthrough of the specimen using the model on Cardioscape, and on Thursdays we'll actually do a walkthrough with the actual physical specimen. So Tuesday will kind of be a cool preview and prep of what's to come on Thursday. And so we've got the Cardioscape app open here now, and remember you can go to learnchd.com or cardio-scape.com and download it for free. It's available for Windows or Mac and has over 100 heart specimens loaded there, and as you can see, many of them are labeled and some of them actually have videos, and we'll be updating with more specimens routinely. So make sure you go ahead and download Cardioscape and start looking at some of the specimens there. But why don't we go ahead and start off with the specimen that we have here. I'll go ahead and shut off these labels real quick. So the heart would have sat roughly in the chest like this. Obviously the anterior wall of this heart has been reflected up, so you can see the inside surface of the anterior wall, and it's been flipped up and open. So the anterior surface of the heart would have been facing out towards the screen, posterior is into the screen, superior head up here, inferior legs down here, left is over here, and right is over here. Now, we don't have much of the appendage left, but we'll start off as we usually do, which is trying to find what externally appears to be the right atrial appendage. And here's an appendage that does appear to be triangular in shape, pyramidal, or broad-based, so consistent with a morphologic right atrium. So we'll go ahead and start off there. And when we look inside that structure, we do see pectinate muscles that spill outside the confines of the appendage, consistent with a morphologic right atrium. And then we do find the oval fossa here. Then we find the tendon of Totaro and the coronary sinus here. And remember, the coronary sinus and the tendon of Totaro are important structures. They're two of the three bounds of the triangle of Koch. So the coronary sinus, the tendon of Totaro, and the right-sided atrioventricular valve form a triangle that's known as the triangle of Koch. And this is an important structure because at its apex, which would be roughly here, is where we would expect the atrioventricular node to sit. So here in the triangle of Koch, at its apex, we would expect the AV node to sit. Now, when we continue looking at this heart, we do find a right-sided atrioventricular valve. This valve does have three leaflets. One is up here, as that anterior surface has been reflected. One is here, and then one is here. So we've got three leaflets, and we can clearly see that this leaflet has direct connections to the ventricular septum, which is all consistent with the morphologic tricuspid valve. So the anterior rear leaflet is up here and reflected. Here's the septal leaflet, and here's the inferior leaflet of the tricuspid valve. When we look at the ventricle itself, it's got coarse trabeculations, and we see the septomarginal trabeculation here. And what we see very nicely are the cranial and the caudal limbs of the septomarginal trabeculation. So once again, here's the septomarginal trabeculation, aka the moderator band. Here's the cranial limb. Here's the caudal limb of the septomarginal trabeculation, or what some people will call the Y of the septal band. And within the Y of the septal band, we can see that there is a ventricular septal defect. And so since this ventricular septal defect lives in the Y of the septal band, or phrased differently, between the cranial and caudal limbs of the septomarginal trabeculation, this is an outlet ventricular septal defect. And you'll see from the specimen video as well, but you can see that there is a fibrous postero-inferior rim to this outlet ventricular septal defect here. So once again, the postero-inferior border of this ventricular septal defect is in fact fibrous. As we get out into the outflow tract here, we find a semilunar valve with 3 leaflets, 1, 2, 3. There are 3 sinuses, although it's difficult to tell from this scan, although you can see some of the sinuses here. And it's important to note that there is no true round or oval annulus of this semilunar valve. It is hinged in a crown-like appearance, so the annulus is actually crown-like, and what we call the annulus as a round or oval structure is actually truly a man-made construct, nonetheless helpful for our clinical purposes though. So when we look further into this outflow tract, we find that it does give rise to the pulmonary arteries. So here are the branch pulmonary arteries, here's the left pulmonary artery, and here's the right pulmonary artery arising from the pulmonary trunk. And there are no coronary arteries arising from these sinuses. So this in fact is a pulmonary valve, and this in fact is the pulmonary trunk, and here are the branch pulmonary arteries arising from the pulmonary trunk. But as we continue up the pulmonary trunk, we see that the aorta actually does come off of the pulmonary trunk, or at least part of it. So there is the pulmonary trunk here, ductal arch here, and then the transverse and descending aorta here. Now, the ascending aorta is unfortunately kind of hidden back here, but the ascending aorta does arise from the morphologic left ventricle, which is here, and is interrupted. So in this specimen, there is an outlet ventricular septal defect with a fibrous postero-inferior border and an interrupted aortic arch. And also of note, there is, and you can kind of appreciate it here when you angle this down, but there is posterior deviation of this outlet septum here, which a lot of people will say then could be potentially one of the hemodynamic reasons that flow to the aorta was impaired, and potentially a reason that the interruption formed in the first place. But obviously that's all causative or speculative, I should say. So once again, we've got a specimen here with an outlet ventricular septal defect and an interrupted aortic arch. And be sure to look out for the actual specimen walkthrough video, which will come out on Thursday.